Rita, for the nice introduction. I think we are going to go with a poll now. Audience, if you all can answer this poll, just take a moment to do so. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. Have a it's a great day. It's beautiful out here. Weather is awesome. Spring is always my favorite season. So welcome to all of you, and for the support. As Anita said, I got very worked up and upset that I needed to do something when we had 3 suicides in 1 year in Colombia. It's a small community in small Indian community. It happened in 1 year in 2019. So that got us start these discussions, and had great partners, all the panelists here, and Framework for Future. Everything fell in right place. Great, 46% good, 54% okay, all right. So okay, good is good. So all right. The suicides made me aware that we have to do something for the Indian community, and that's how we started to have the discussion. This is to create awareness, educate about when to seek help and how. We have a lot of things to cover today, and thanks to, as I said, like Framework for Future, Charlotte Tamil Sangam, and Cardinal Innovations to partner with us. Thanks to all the panelists here who, except Dr. Cecilia Fernandez are my alumni mates. The Cecilia has been awesome. She's just an angel. Thanks for joining here. So let me introduce the panelists here. So we have, and I'm doing it based on alphabetical order, not on any in a hierarchy. So Dr. Cecilia Fernandez, she's a child neurologist in Columbia, South Carolina. She's going to cover headaches, initial preventive strategies versus headaches which need immediate attention, developmental delays, when to worry. Then we have Dr. Lorenzi Fernando. She is an adult, child, and adolescent psychiatry. She practices in Fairfax, Virginia. Her topic will be parenting our American children and cultural factors in upbringing. Next, we have Priya Foster. She is a licensed professional counselor. She is out at Fort Worth, Texas. She's going to cover therapy, when to seek therapy, therapy process, and different approaches, finding a therapist in therapy. Next, we have Dr. Jairaj Padmanabhan. He is a general adult psychiatrist. He is based at Vancouver, Delta, British Columbia, Canada, and his topic would be ADHD, gaming addiction. Last but not the least, my best friend, Dr. Kalpana Shanmugam. She is an adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist. She's based at Charlotte, North Carolina. She's going
Looks like we lost Purnima there.
Yeah. Oh, she's here.
Oh, what happened?
You just froze. You're back on now. Go ahead.
Yeah, you were introducing Dr. Kalpana, so if you can continue there.
All right, so I'm going to go address this question to Kalpana. Having 3 kids with ages 6, 17, and 19 in the house during COVID times, with all activities individually and virtually, made them feel depressed. What could we have done differently? And there was also another question. How to overcome the solitude that this pandemic is creating in children. My younger daughter cannot remain within the four walls in a single day. With the second wave surging high, I cannot satisfy her request to go out every day. She feels very sad about it. And then I have a completely opposite question that follows here, but I will let Kalpana take these questions.
I think we should all take a moment and, really give ourselves credit for surviving the peak of the pandemic, hopefully the peak of the pandemic, because, none of us have lived through this before. We didn't know how to react. Just like, I think it was like a loss, we all were grieving the loss of life as we knew it. And we were going through a mixture of emotions. There was like shock and anger and frustration and anxiety. And then I think 1 year later, it's almost like we've come to a certain level of acceptance, but then it keeps changing. So I think the most important thing is to understand that this is something that we've never dealt with before. And, recognizing the emotion and validating the emotion that the child is feeling. And, in a way, all of us are going through it. So maybe for parents to talk about their own emotions with their child. And I know the parent mentioned the word depressed there. Sometimes with lay people, sadness and depression is kind of used interchangeably. Though, sadness is the normal human emotion in reaction to a life-changing event. But then sadness can get pathological and get into depression. So it's very important for the parent to recognize the emotion, ask the child, because very often the child will be able to give you the answer, to ask them how they feel, ask them what would make them feel better. But if you have a child that is very shut down, of course, you may need to get some professional help. But validating their emotion, being open with our own emotion and helplessness or the lack of control we had with our lives, modeling the behavior we want to see in our children is a very important aspect of it. I think the mom mentioned about children being like 17, 18. So the needs of the child is different based on the developmental age. So you had a year where we were all kind of confined to a common space. So making sure, I know we all came together as a family, whether we liked it or not, we came together in confined spaces. So making the best use of it. And also, trying to spend quality time with each of the child, especially for the older children, they are, a big part of what they needed to do this year is transitioning to the next phase of their life. So there's a lot of things like independent living skills, how to do their finances, how to do their laundry if they haven't already been doing it, cooking, cleaning. So those are all some life skills that they needed to learn. So that it could have been, one thing I think a lot of children did learn a lot of those skills. So appreciating what we have and making the child understand what we can control, we could, we adapted very well. So, giving them a lot of compliments of how well they've adapted. This generation, this is going to define this generation, and they've become they're going to grow up as a much more resilient generation than the one before, because, it's a year, and it's amazing how the little kids have adapted to it. So, give them compliments for what they are doing right. And we are all still in somewhat of a survival mode. So accepting, validating, giving them compliments, identifying helplessness and frustration, and modeling that behavior ourselves, I think is a good way of going about it. About the girl who's something about like being, I don't think any one of us are made to be stuck in a room for long periods of time. That's just, we are humans, we are social beings. Interaction and human interaction and expressing ourselves in many ways is a very important aspect of who we are. So in fact, if the child is doing that, you want to make sure that that's not the case. You want them to get out, promote activities outside of the house. The same thing the child does inside the room, they can do outside of the room too. All of us have Wi-Fi, so you can sit on a deck, the weather is good. So help them get out. You can still go for walks, still do safe activities that involves interaction with people and doing the things that we like to do while being safe. Anything else anybody wants to add?
So on the comment that you made about like we're all in this together, Kalpana, I want to add a story. My 16-year-old said, "Oh, I said like we are all in this together," and he's like, "That doesn't make my sadness better. It's still my own sadness. Just because everybody is together, that doesn't make it any better." So I mean, why I was like, "Oh, that is actually a correct thing." So, but then I know I was looking at the story, like, there was just a squirrel outside in our yard. There's a birdhouse. The squirrel was so smart, like, how we put the bird feeder, like we put the seeds in, and then like this squirrel somehow found a way to get to the bird feeder, and it shook it off, and then the rest of the squirrels were on the ground and like getting the seeds. I thought that was very interesting. The squirrels figured out to live together and like, get them out of the situation where they were deprived of food. So I
And
think being in this together is a big thing, big deal. Like, we have to help each other out to get out of this
Right.
feeling.
And it's not a context, it affects each person in a different way. I think kids have also learned to figure it out. I think one of the common things a lot of kids do is they just do homework together. They'll have a friend quietly on FaceTime on another corner, and they do homework together. So they have, I think a good way to ask is, it doesn't discount how they're feeling, but we may also ask them, what do you think will make you feel better? What are some things that brought you joy before the pandemic that you still can do or alter and do it, So, and I think that's where technology has been a big boon to us, as much as we all hate our screens, can you imagine living through this without it, So I think identifying the ambiguity of some of the things that we have, I think that's very important. We're all prepared for the next pandemic.
No.
What can we do differently? Like, I think it put things in perspective. There's a lot of things that we learned that, I think this is not just going to make us survive a different pandemic in case we have it, but it just makes us all resilient.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important. Right. I mean, jokes apart, like, I think, having that, sharing the story of like Spanish flu, like, okay, we had an end, just to say like it's not going to be there forever. I think that'll also help. I think like
Right.
World War II, World War I, like Great Depression, everything had an end, like all the catastrophes. So
Right.
I think,
Yeah, we survived not just the pandemic is not over. We didn't just survive the peak of the pandemic. There was the BLM movement, there was the election, there was Trump, there was so many other things. And it gave us an opportunity to talk about a lot of things that we normally would be too busy to talk about. I think it forced us to have those conversations with each other, each of our families, So I think there were, engaging them in conversations that we normally wouldn't probably have time to do that would be a good place to start as well.
all right. So attendees, you guys are welcome to post questions in Q&A area. Please go ahead and feel free to type in your questions, and we'll be happy to answer. So the next question is for Priya. So whatever Kalpana said, it's like the opposite issue. And I will, so they're saying for the past 1+ year of lockdowns and homeschooling, kids seem like doing just fine, happy, bubbly with their social interactions with their friends via Zoom calls, text messages, watching movies remotely together, Zoom dancing, helping parents with cooking, cleaning, etc. They're also doing well in studies and exams. All indicators seem fine, but still there is something missing. They don't want to step out of the home or to even for a shortest drive or even just to catch a sun in the deck. So this is exactly opposite of what the previous question was. How do we get the kids interested in outdoor social activities after a year-long stuck at home mindset, especially when they are not vaccinated and don't want to go out?
There was an article talking about this, that actually even people who seem really comfortable going out it's going to be a tough transition for everybody, because we really have all spent a lot of time at home in fear, to be honest, that we're going to catch this thing, or for kids that they're going to catch it and give it to their parents or their grandparents, and people have done that, right? And so this article suggested that we go really slow actually in terms of reentry, and that we don't push ourselves to do things that are super uncomfortable right away, so kind of thinking about, I think with kids, always having those conversations about what do you want to do? What are you comfortable with? But then thinking about what are small, lower risk steps towards kind of reentry, which sounds very formal, but it's true. We're like, I think about going to a restaurant and I'm like, that seems like 5 years away for me. I'm so scared to do that. So just kind of relating to that we're all sort of scared to get back into things now, and I think we need to kind of be realistic and gentle with ourselves, that this is just going to be a slow process, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean there's irreparable damage. Things will go back to the way they were and they will be comfortable again, but we really are still in a transitional time, and it's okay for that to be slow.
Okay. So there's a question that came up. What if your child has become an introvert, indoor lazy kid who does not want to go out or make friends or take up a hobby? Child just being happy being on social media. Only that makes the kid happy. Is it, will this be a question for, do you think it's going towards like gay addiction, electronic addiction? Jairaj?
Yeah, I can answer this. So as a parent, we have the responsibility to create that opportunity for our kids. That platform should not be the social media alone to communicate or to socialize. So you can pick a phone and talk to your friends. You can meet your friends outside in the deck and maintain that social distancing and play in such a way without coming close contact to each other, so that recognizing that the kid is deviating from the normal social behavior more towards withdrawn behavior, staying in their room, avoiding socialization within the family environment, like not coming to the dining table to have food together, and happy to be sitting in his room reading the book and not interacting with the sibling. So all this were alarming signs that there is a deviation happening here, and those were the early warning signs. So you bring that kid into the family and try to do things together, as somebody earlier mentioned. You involve them in the day-to-day issues in the house, like cleaning, laundry, cooking. You teach them new skills. Ask them, my kid here is making orange juice for me and making tea for me, and sometimes breakfast for me, and he loves it. When he is validated for those activities, and he feels happy that he is actively contributing to something. If you give him a chance that it will all go to the one game where his school friends will meet together, and that is the only platform they have out of school, like Minecraft. So everybody is online playing Minecraft, and when we banned that video game thing because it was going too much, then he is being outcasted. Like there is no other option for him to socialize. So you create opportunities for them, like out of school, if there are any other activities like playing tennis, and he can make friends in tennis, basketball, and other like soccer or baseball, where he has got friends there. When his school friends are not entertaining anything outside this Minecraft, you create opportunities for the kid outside school with other groups where video game is not the common platform. So it's working together with your kids so that you identify early, so that you don't regret later that this kid is sitting in his room with doors closed, which is opening up more and more room to pathology in future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think adding on to that, I agree with Jairaj and Priya. It's very important for us to, one of the many psychologists, child psychologists, is Alfie Kohn. And what he said was, we have to attribute to children the best possible motive that is consistent with the facts. So here you are, in a COVID situation, stuck at home most of the time. Kids have gotten used to being on their cell phones and um, computers, but we still have to attribute to them the best possible motive. He is on, so I instead of saying, here you are, you're worried. I understand you're worried that is he becoming lazy? Is he becoming somebody who does not want to do? But it's better to attribute his excessive cell phone use or computer use to COVID and say, before COVID, you used to do all these things. You still will be able to do these things. When are you able to do other things, right? And this is just similar to what Dr. Jairaj just said, which is, we have to talk to our kids and come up with ways for them to get out of. We don't want them to become socially isolated when they want to, when the whole group is playing Minecraft. We want them to be able to play that Minecraft, but we can also talk to them about, okay, give us a time that we all can go out and do this, or you can play this. Give me a time. So usually kids are able to give us they are able to communicate with us.
Okay, so we have a poll. Thanks, Jairaj and Lorenzi. We have a poll now. Take a moment, please, to answer the poll. When was the last time you had a candid conversation about stress and anxiety? Within the past month, within the past year, long time ago, cannot remember, never. So tagging along with what you said, Lorenzi, I was listening to another counselor talk. Like they said, this during this COVID time, please don't take away the electronics from them, because that's the only thing they have. That's the go-to. So I mean, we still haven't crossed the pandemic. Is this a time for worrying about social? The kids getting socially isolated? I mean, should we, I guess, the worry, should we wait to worry about it, or should we, I guess that's a question.
Yeah. Anything, of course we have to worry. Oh, let's listen to let's look at the poll results.
So the most answer is within the, 35% answered within the past month. 35% answered long time ago, cannot remember. 18% said within the past year, and 12% said never. Okay, so within the past month, I guess it's all from the COVID again. There's like, and then there is a long time ago too. So, okay.
So to answer your question, Purnima, about when should we be worried? Should we not remove their electronics? It is something to be constantly, we have to be watchful. We do have to be watchful. I'm a big proponent of unconditional parenting. I do not believe in conditional parenting. I'm going to take this away for you to behave. You have to do this for me to give this to you, right? So in this COVID time, what we're saying is continue to develop a relationship with your children. Keep an open communication with them about the use of electronics also, right? And at some level, we do try to balance. Usually what works, what we all have been talking repeatedly in this past year, honestly, is about having a schedule, and the schedule includes a whole variety of things, but it also includes gaming and Snapchat and everything else. But we do have to watch, we do have to talk, we do have to redirect. but we don't angrily remove things, because that is not helpful.
Right.
Anyone else wants to add?
None of us would want to give up our phones now. Like we will be, I mean, I don't think any of us are ready to give up our electronics, right? So because especially when they're already socially isolated, the one connection they have with their peer group, you don't want to take it away unless there's like a safety risk involved or something like that. I think balance is the key. Like I think early on, the gaming or social connection through media shouldn't get in the way of them taking care of their personal hygiene, dinner time, homework time, school time. So, as long as they understand that, you can do this, but you're not going to give up on sleep to game. You're not going to not come and have dinner with us because your friends are on Minecraft. So setting limits, but still have, because the biggest thing that we all are feeling is helplessness because there's lack of control of what's happening. So this virus has taken over our lives. So children are feeling that helplessness too. Their life has turned upside down. So I think giving them some level of control of their little world, we want that. If not, they'll feel even more helpless. And the most important aspect, one of the things of developmental is that peer interaction, because that's how they learn. They learn through play. So if you take away that peer interaction and communication, because in a normal world, they will be spending 8 hours with their friends in school. They'll be in recess with their friends. They'll be in their sports with their friends. So even in a regular world, they'll be spending much less time with us. So you want them to have access, but it cannot take over the rest of what they need to accomplish as well.
Okay. So I guess that would be the same thing so we talked about social media. I guess will this apply to the gaming aspect too? Or is there like any other, like gaming addiction is a separate disorder by itself now, like it's classified. Are these rules applied to the gaming addiction too, Jairaj?
So I just want to add, the gaming addiction is something like when you compare it with alcohol addiction or any serious drug addiction, the gaming addiction, you don't see the physical dependence symptoms there. Like you don't have shakes when you don't use those. And whereas the issues were all psychological. When the kid prioritizes this video games as the sole thing, the whole life revolves around this gaming, and he or she starts to neglect the other things, what Kalpana is talking about, the personal hygiene, the family time, and the school performance, the academic performance, the sleep hygiene, everything is compromised because of the priority, the obsessive compulsion towards like, oh, I have to play. When am I going to play next? Every thought revolves around this gaming, and socially withdrawing from everything else defines a disorder. And when you have reached this point, I think it is time as a parent you intervene, seek appropriate help to address this addictive behavior. So for a safety family environment, if you are able to maintain that screen time, like, okay, you can play once or twice a week on an average, half an hour to 1 hour per week. And if the kid is able to keep up to the discipline and not doing anything behind your back, if they have that boundaries well set in the house, then you can let them play. And there should be other medium to socialize as well. So this Minecraft or other video games should not be the only way of connecting with peers, and the peer interaction should not be restricted to the video games. If that is happening, then a higher level of change needs to happen by communicating with school and other parents. So it's our role as a parent to create that environment for the kids where there are other activities like board games, carom board, and outdoor activities. You create that environment for the kid.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So seeking help, meaning like you address it with a licensed therapist, or do you go to a child psychiatrist? Where would you start?
A behavioral therapist can be a good point to start before you look at the extreme forms. The extreme forms is when you take away the medium, when you take away the video game from the kid, and if the kid is lashing out, not eating, if it is going to an extreme of behavioral deviation, then there is a pathology here. Some kids will forget and easily adapt to board games and stuff. Then there is no problem there. Like you took away and you replaced it with something which is healthy, adaptable, and they adjusted to it, then there is no problem. But if the kid is reacting depressed, resisting each and everything, making your life difficult, then that is time to address it through a behavioral therapist.
Okay. So, so another question for both Cecilia and Jairaj, is gaming addiction connected to ADHD?
No, so I think, how Jairaj put it, that gaming addiction in itself, there is now a neurochemical imbalance, so this needs to be addressed with like a clinical psychologist or a behavioral therapist. So now the child has moved from their normal behavior and they've moved into something where that has become their adapted normal. And that would make them prone to other conditions like depression, anxiety, and that takes away from their normal day-to-day life. So I think there is a significant difference here in gaming addiction versus ADHD. ADHD by itself, it has certain, so it's attention deficit, and then you can have the inattention symptoms as well as the hyperactivity symptoms. So I'm sure some of our other psychiatrists might have more insight into it. But when we see children who have ADHD, it's very easy to label children as ADHD because they are slightly hyperactive or they are inattentive. Now, if you're going to confine them within a small space, like Kalpana was saying, that's not their normal. So they will at first have difficulty. They might be inattentive. They might lose focus. But with time, their behavior should revolve towards normal behavior, where they start to participate. They start to participate in some activities where other children are involved, because that is just their normal social behavior. But if you're seeing a deviation from that, where it is continuously, they are inattentive, they're not able to focus, they want to go back to gaming. So that's a time where you can talk to a behavioral specialist and they can intervene and give you opportunities to be able to, before you go to like a medication or you go to psychotherapy, they might give you ways to be able to deal with this at home. So this is, I do feel like, answering your question, there is a distinct difference between ADHD and gaming addiction, and they both have to be dealt with by somebody who is, professional.
So basically, what I'm trying to ask is, I guess the ADHD can ADHD lead to a gaming addiction?
Yeah, I can answer that. So with ADHD, this kids are more susceptible to these comorbidities where when they are hyper focused on, they are constantly stimulated by this gaming, like different things like shooting game, and the screen keeps on changing, and this novelty seeking behavior, these kids, the dopamine is constantly stimulated by this gaming. So anything that creates boredom for them, they give up easily. So to answer this, the ADHD kids are more prone for gaming addiction.
Okay, so will that okay, so substance abuse, will that be, I guess that's a totally different topic. I just moved on from gaming addiction to substance abuse.
Related, actually, to be honest.
It's kind of like sort of related. So would you be able to speak a little bit about early symptoms of substance abuse too, real quick? I think we'll also have a lot more.
So the key message for the parents is you should know your kids' behavior. What is normal for your children? How do they behave in social settings, and how do they behave at home? What kind of activities they are interested in? Who are their friends? And what is their academic performance? What is their baseline for academic performance? So something like standards you have set in your house, and how your kid is evolving around that standards. So any deviation from the standards should be alarming for you. So there will be subtle changes in the beginning. Like if the kid is slowly isolating, even in this COVID period, when you have created this environment for family get-togethers, and if your kid is avoiding and spending more time withdrawn, either online with friends or slowly restricting activities and the academic performance going down, mixing with older peers, and you are getting alarm signals from school and your other parents like, oh, I saw your kid with this other person, his track record is not good. And somebody told me recently, I got this message from the wife that in this school, this female kids are vaping in the washroom. And this kid came back to the parent and gave that information to the parent, and this parent communicated to the other parent. So you should be aware of what's happening in the school environment. If you can't be totally naive to like, oh, there is no vaping in school, there is no cannabis happening in these grades. So you are more prepared and be aware and open your eyes to what your kid is being exposed to in school, so that you carefully watch for those signs and you educate them in advance. So I will say prevention is better here. When it comes to this kind of addictive behaviors, addiction to hard drugs, cannabis, alcohol, all that, you need to keep an extra vigilant there when you're in a community where everything is legal. If cannabis is legal, it is available everywhere. And the same with alcohol. It's not sold to certain age group, but it is so available even for a 10-year-old around here. They have the ways to get it. So when that is so prevalent, you keep the boundary very clearly. You educate your children about the consequences to those behaviors. And if you see an early warning sign happening, you work together. Both the parents should work together, and with school, with teachers, with other parents, and you have somebody who is close to you in their friend circle to give you tips about what's happening with your kid. Like if there is any deviation in behavior, they will alert you through their parents, kind of. So you've developed that safety network around your kids, so that you should not be the last person to hear that your kid is smoking weed. So that's the message for the parents.
Okay, all right. So going from the substance abuse, thanks, Jairaj. I'm going to go right into bullying. So Priya, I would like to address these questions to you. How to handle cultural differences and bullying related to it. How to help them avoid racial, cultural difference bullying in schools. And I think there are like a couple of questions in the QA sessions that I will batch it up and we will answer that live as well.
So, it's hard to avoid cultural, racial bullying in school because it happens. And it's important to understand a few things with bullying. Bullying is really driven by sort of a kid who wants power and control, a kid who feels out of control. So as kind of calm and unflustered as your kid can seem, the better. And so that has a lot to do with parents and children and how they interact and what you're doing in the home and getting them prepared for things like this if they're happening. So like the doctor had just said, you don't want to be the last person who figured out that your kid is smoking weed. It's kind of the same thing here. You want to be on the front line if they're getting bullied. Like you want them to have a comfortable enough relationship with you that they're telling you that right away. One really big thing I want to get across, because I work with teenagers and bullying all the time, is that as parents, we really want to fix it. Sometimes when we intervene, it gets worse. So if you call the bully's parent and that parent tells the kid, that kid could bully your kid more. If you go tell the principal, all those things, like we want to get really involved, and sometimes that's actually not the best thing. So the first line is to figure out what's going on, like how severe is the bullying, how chronic, how long has it been happening? And at that point you can see, okay, do I need to tell a counselor? Do I need to tell a teacher? And always work with your kid on what they want to be done, because your kid will probably tell you, no, I don't want you to talk to anybody. And then you figure out what the next steps are. And then the second line is talking to them about, okay, what's a plan for you the next time this happens? And role playing with kids is a great idea. Like, pretend you're the bully, have them respond to you, have their sibling pretend to be the bully. There's this new concept in school called upstanders, where they're trying to, instead of have kids be bystanders, be kids who are like actively intervening on behalf of kids being bullied. So that's absolutely something to talk to teachers, counselors, and principals about, without even talking about bullying. Just like, is there a program like this at the school? Are you guys actively talking to kids about this? Those are really good things to have conversations with your school district and your teachers about, but also have your kids know their classmates. They can sort of identify other kids that would be helpful to them and encourage them to be helpful to other kids, kind of to have a community of peers that are supportive and helpful to them. And the conversations that we can also have with them about, who are you spending your time with? What are your friends like? Because you want them to have a really good, solid group of friends if they're being bullied by anyone else. That will very much help them kind of survive that environment. And the last piece I would add is, bullying is much more harmful if the child's ego is already kind of fragile. And that's a place where parents can be super helpful, right? Like, we're the ego builders, like that's our job, and like that's what we can really do. So to kind of interact with kids in a way that helps them build that ego. So if they're coming home and we're sort of criticizing or shaming them or pointing out things that aren't that great, like, why'd you get a B instead of an A? I mean, these are all things that kind of hit at the ego a bit. So figuring out how to talk to kids in a way that's really building them up, where they feel not better than other people, but just good about themselves. Like, I'm okay, I can handle it. I've got my parents, I've got my posse, like I can go to school and I'm okay, that kind of thing. That'll get you a lot better results than, like I said, than like calling the other kids' parents. I have not seen that go well very often in 10 years of therapy with teenagers. So, but I would love to hear other people's opinions too.
So to add to this, I know Dr. Jairaj just answered about substance use, and Priya talked something similar about bullying. So I attended a conference recently by UCSF, University of California at San Francisco, and they used an acronym called PIPE. Okay, so PIPE is prepare, initiate, plan, and execute. Okay, but it's very similar to what both of them already talked about, which is, our first job is to lay the groundwork with our kids, which is to prepare them, right? To prepare them by just having a very open communication with them. There's no good time. There's no best time to start that. It can be any time, as early as possible.
Lorenzi, sorry to interrupt, but can you repeat that PIPE again?
It's prepare, initiate, plan, and execute.
Okay.
Preparing is laying the groundwork. We build the relationship with our child. This is that ego building, the cherry, that part, right? Where we are basically saying, hey, we are there. We are going to be available for you. We are not going to judge you, but we are there for you and we love you. And we'll be there to whatever you do, even if you mess up, right? And kind of remind them that, they will not be punished for telling you something that you don't want to hear. Like, if it is a teenager saying, I was in a party where there was marijuana. I was in a party where there was alcohol, right? Our biggest job at that point is to not lose our top, right? But to be able to sit down and listen to what they have to say and to see what did the child do with that piece of information, right? But it can be as early as a third grader, Asian American kid who is being called, I have a lot of Pakistani kids who tell me they've been called terrorist, right? A Chinese kid who'd say they've been called chinkus and, with slanted eyes, right? At any time. That's what I'm saying. It can be bullying. It could be substances, it can be some stupid stuff that they did. But our job is we prepare them by being open communication at home. And the second thing is initiate. You initiate conversations about anything and everything, right? It can be, but what it allows us to do is to set expectations. This is what we should do. Hey, did you see the news about all this thing? What's going on? What do you think about it? What do you feel about it? And then discuss various types. If it is a teenager, you can talk about risky situations. If it is a young child, you can talk about bullying and how to keep themselves safe. How are they going to deal with these situations? And then again, talk about your own parenting values, practices, expectations, and then safety over everything, right? So I feel the pipe applies to everything, even when there is no trouble, when there's no bullying, there's no substance use. It may be just a play date. It may be just hanging out for the night with a friend, right? So we initiate those conversations and we talk about, hey, what are the risks involved? What do we have to do? When do you call us? What will you do if you're not able to? Who's the friend you're going with? So everything and everything, right? And you plan everything with the child by talking about it, right? And then finally, when it's time to execute it, you're just available to catch them. If things don't go according to plan, because things sometimes don't go according to plan.
So that leads to, I guess, like resilience. Can we go on to speaking about, there are some questions about resilience. Can we move on to that, or shall I go for the anxiety, depression? Shall I address this question?
I think some of the questions were how to help build mental strength, right?
Yeah. So one is how. I would like to know more about handling teens. There was one question, and then they said there was one, how to treat them friendly without them taking advantage of all the freedom provided. We sort of touched that. Then there's a question about Asian American hate crimes. What messages should their children hear about based on age group? How do we help them process it while it's a tough topic for us? How to correct child's mistake without criticizing them. Then there was a question here in the QA. How do you avoid conditional parenting and get your teenagers to do their activities? Did I batch a lot of things together?
I think I'll touch upon a little bit because what Lorenzi said with children already being prepared. So I'll touch upon a little bit of their emotional development. Like when somebody had asked, among the questions, like when should we start having these conversations with our kids? Like, is it a right time when they're teenagers? Is it a right time when they're 5 years old? So I think to understand when does your child first feel emotion? It is right when they are born. They are already experiencing emotion. Their first innate nature, which we all have within us, is a very positive innate nature. It is, the innate nature of love. So when you carry a baby, that's the first thing you feel, right? Very naturally. But as they become like 2 years or so, they start to develop social smile. That's their first expression of emotion because they see faces. They don't understand emotion the way adults do. And then as they grow older, within the first year of life itself, they pick up on faces. So how is mommy looking? Is she looking sad? Is she crying? They can see that. They don't understand it, but they are processing all that internally and mentally. Then they develop stranger anxiety, and over time they start to have, like, once they reach the age of 2, like temper tantrums. So they know how to now express their emotions, like the anger and so to speak. So I think our bigger question is like, as we come away from our childhood, are we able to understand our emotions? So Kalpana one very nicely mentioned in the beginning, even as parents or adults, are we able to process it? Because even we are going through challenging times. So when we understand our emotions, then it's very easy for us to have those communications with our children. And the communication can begin as early as when they are 2 or 3 years old. So when they ask you, Mommy, are you feeling sad or are you feeling happy? You don't just say, no, nothing's happening or nothing's wrong, because that's how usual, in Indian families, we often, like, if we are crying, we don't want to share it because we feel children will not understand. But children understand like happiness, sadness, they understand emotions. So we have to be very open in our communication, right? When they are small. And now you can be even more so. So, if you are feeling stressed after a long Zoom call, have that communication with them, because only they can then reciprocate with you and have that communication with you. So open expression is one very, very important aspect of emotional development, which eventually makes them very stable emotional beings in adulthood as well. So now when it comes to like hate crime and things like that, Lorenzi very nicely touched upon motive, like understanding the situation yourself, understanding that the person who is doing this because difference is magnified for them, and making your children understand that we have to focus on how to stay connected with people we know. Let's focus on, somebody is acting out of fear and because of magnified differences in society. Whereas what do we learn as children, and always, our faith or whatever it might be teaches us, is to be one, because we stay one connected with humanity and nature. So kind of, putting or instilling these kind of values into their life. Like you can use this situation to teach them a contrast quality, a positive quality. And that comes through open communication. Because if you're afraid to have that communication, then they are going to also pick up only fear from that situation. Then there is nobody gains from that situation. So just wanted to cover like open expression and, really asking yourself, like, do I understand my own emotions, how I feel, both good and bad, and owning it and being okay with it and acceptance. So moving back to what Kalpana said very nicely.
So basically you're saying that even for the hate crimes, like you could,
Yeah.
you have an open conversation regardless of what age it is. There's no safety.
Yeah. Because they are going to hear it irrespective.
Correct.
Whether they hear it from their peers or whether they hear it on news, whether they hear it now, whether they hear it 2-3 years from now.
Mhm.
These are, these are acts that are happening out of magnified differences.
Yeah. Okay.
And something very interesting that I saw like just a couple of days ago was, when astronauts leave the planet, the first impression they feel when they see the planet Earth is interconnectedness. Like we can't be working in isolation with differences, whereas we are all connected. So those are the kind of examples we can use in our day-to-day life. There are lovely YouTube videos to show children how there are children across US who are using so many, they're recycling, they are connected with nature, they are using this opportunity at home to do so many positive things. So like Jairaj was saying, right, it does not have to be only gaming. Like there are young boys who are doing really good things in the community. So are we talking about it? Are we sharing it with our children? Are we, making them part of these groups where there are positive things happening, young children coming together online, talking about, planet initiatives, planting a tree in your backyard, teaching them life skills. So
I also wanted to mention, I think one other thing parents need to do, especially our Indian parents, is to come to terms with our own racial bias that we have, because I think that's important, because I have had parents that would, so afraid of their child being bullied because of racism, but they kind of emanate the same amount of anger or kind of stereotyping of other races themselves. So I think that's also an important thing for a parent to address.
Watch what we say, that they model.
I'll learn, try to make the change ourselves too.
Right. Yeah. And then that the perception will change on the kid. So I think there is going to be a poll right now. Thank you, Cecilia. This will be a last one, and then we will go with we have like some more questions. So what has stopped you from seeking help for anxiety, stress concerns about behavior, mental health issues for yourself or your children. Thought it was just a phase that will pass. My symptoms were not severe enough to go to professionals, was afraid that medication would be required. I'm not a good parent if I need help with this. Did not know there are doctors and therapists, such things. So if you take a moment to vote, and then maybe we could go to that next. Kalpana, we have some anxiety.
Let's segue into anxiety, because I think somebody had asked about anxiety, about reintegration into school, especially, you know, actually, I'm kind of dreading that too myself. You know, come October, how are the children going to, you know, because we went through those stages of acceptance, and I think we've kind of adapted ourselves to the pandemic world, and now we are slowly coming back to normalcy. So I think that's another thing that we humans do, you know, we adapt to things, and then change is always anxiety provoking. So many kids have become so comfortable, because in some ways this way of living kind of gave them, you know, they could just roll out of bed and start school. They don't have to, like, you know, take care of them, or they can sleep in, they can sleep late. So there are a lot of things that they're doing that are, you know, less stressful for them, which is going to be very anxiety provoking to them. So one of the things I think this summer most parents can focus on, and to bring some level of, at least in the month of August, in preparation for school, to start, you know, working on their sleep hygiene a little bit more. The ones that are sleeping late, you know, kind of make it more closer to their normal bedtime. For those children that are having a lot of anxiety about going back to school, you know, one of the things to explore is to find out, you know, if they have an underlying anxiety disorder. You know, some level of anxiety is normal, but if they are panicking and they don't want to go to school, that might be a child where they may need to start off with talking with the pediatrician to see if the child may have an underlying anxiety disorder, or get them in therapy during the summer in preparation for the next school year. So they have all the skills they need. You know, sometimes it may involve talking to the guidance counselor and identifying a person that they can go talk to when the first or second week of school, they're still having a lot of anxiety or panic attacks or something like that. So getting them professional help when it's really, really severe, but recreating some level of, you know, kind of school-like, you know, day in the weeks before school starts might also prepare them for it. Yeah, and I think somebody else is going to like answer about anxiety. I think Jairaj, about anxiety and substance use, maybe.
No, I think this is another question, Kalpana. There are a couple of questions I would like to tag into what you said, and then I will announce the poll results. So how to help kids manage stress, anxiety, depression caused by peer group, academic performance, college admissions, etc. B is a bad grade. I see a number of times that the child determines their worthiness based on grade. Is that good? If not, how do I stop it? So,
right. I think that's something that a lot of kids struggle with. I think one thing is the way we parent. You know, I think our Indian community, especially, you know, there's a lot of, it's very competitive. You know, a lot of us are professionals. So it is very competitive. So I think there's a lot of emphasis on winning, and perfectionistic attitude is very, very much ingrained in our culture. So I think early on, if your child is getting a lot of positive attention and compliments because of accomplishing something or winning something, then they're going to identify themselves. Success is all about winning for them. You know, success is, you know, I think if the emphasis is on the goal, on the prize, then it takes away, you know, when they don't win that prize, then they feel really, really bad about it. So I think it should start early on with the way that they're raised. So focusing on not winning, not focusing on the prize, but focusing on what's important to them, what gives them joy, what gives them, you know, satisfaction, what gives them gratitude, you know. So focusing on their values and what gives them joy rather than the prize. And also, I think another thing I see is, Of course, as parents, we want to protect our child. We don't want them to lose. We don't want to see them hurt. I think there's a lot of overcompensation that happens, especially in our Indian community. So parents, do that, and the child never loses. I've had kids that have never had, never lost or never had a B. So I think it's okay to let the child fail and lose, so that way they know how to deal with disappointment. So I think that's very, very important. Let them figure it out themselves. And again, validating their emotions, giving them a lot of compliments for, identifying something as their passion, putting in the effort, initiating things rather than just winning.
Yeah.
And, B is
Well,
okay.
Very nicely put, right? I mean, basically, as a culture, we actually have to ask ourselves if we place a lot of emphasis on academic achievement, and we do. That is just so ingrained in us, right? We do place a lot of emphasis on academic achievement, and before you know it, we have created this child who realizes, okay, I have to bring home an A for me to be considered successful, for my parents to appreciate my efforts and everything, And expectation is not only to behave well, that is our first expectation, that they behave well. But the second thing is grades and be quote unquote be successful, right? But then studies have shown, right, that when parents place emphasis on academic achievement, their kids showed a lot more distress than parents who...
So it reflects, basically you're saying that the parents' anxiety reflects on the kids. So we just have to somewhat...
Yeah, so we are, we don't intend to cause distress.
Right.
We are really thinking about, oh my gosh, I want my child to do well. But before you know it, what has happened is the child is thinking like this. And then he feels, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. But then parents, but that's why I like this question, actually. See, what I like about this question is this parent is already thinking, hey, what do I do? I didn't intend for this, but suddenly he's bringing home a B, and, but that's a good time to watch ourselves and correct, right? And emphasize that we don't care about, we care more about their well-being than about achievement.
Yeah, in general, how he's
in general. So we constantly have to reassure and say it out loud, that, yes, grades are important, but I care more about your well-being.
Your well-being, yes. So the poll results, we have 50% said thought it was just a phase that will pass. 50% said my symptoms were not severe enough to go to. Two of them said was afraid that medication would be required. So those were the answers for seeking help for anxiety, depression, stress, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's that being said, I'm going to we have a lot more to cover. If you can hang around for, maybe we can try to wrap it by 4:30 maximum. Will that be okay with you guys, panelists and attendees?
Yeah.
We go on. Okay. So what do I have? So we did, Lorenzi, I think you touched on all the teenage behavior, like how to handle, how to be friendly without them taking advantage of the freedom we provide. What do we do with that one? You want to be, and there was another question in the QA chat box, was how to avoid conditional parenting and get your teenagers to do their activities. I think the both are somewhat interconnected.
Yeah. So basically, what unconditional parenting is a lot of times when we ask parents, what is it that you want for your kid, right? When we ask parents, when we ask, what is it that we want for our kids? Most of the time it's things like, I want them to be balanced. I want them to be well adjusted. I want them to be happy. those are the things that actually parents want, right? But often the emphasis, we place so much emphasis on grades and performance and winning that we kind of lose the larger picture because we are so focused on that grade report that shows up every week to our inbox, right? So basically in unconditional parenting, the bottom line is, you put relationship first. You basically, your biggest job is to have a strong, healthy, open relationship with our child. So we put our relationship first and we don't let anything jeopardize that. And what that means is we listen to them, we talk less and we listen more. We also are authentic. We share with them what we experience. A lot of times kids don't even know. A lot of times kids, when I ask the kids, what do the parents do? Many don't know the details of parents' work. Because it's all, everyone is only consumed by their own personal thing, right? But in order to even have a relationship, we have to share. So we have to be authentic and we have to be real. And then we love unconditionally. The word unconditionally is we don't love because of good grades or good friends or good winning a swim meet or winning a tennis match or anything. We repeatedly let them know that we love you regardless of whatever grade you bring home. And sometimes even after you work hard, bad grades come, but guess what? You will be okay. You will be fine. I know you will be fine. And when we give them that reassurance, actually the child will work. They feel good too.
Right.
So I think it's a roundabout answer, but I hope I think
I'm getting it. So you're saying that you allow them to go get grades that are not impressive, and then you don't criticize that. But
yeah.
Like when they are like, if you are worried about taking advantage, that's when like you're doing this pipe thing, intervention. Like you are always like have a plan and
You
have.
do talk to them. See, you do talk to them about alcohol. You talk to them about drug use. You talk to them about your whatever is it. But a lot of times it comes from a place of fear. For
Right.
parents, it comes from a place of ignorance and a place of fear. So
check your feelings first. Check
we
your
have to,
emotions.
and that's why we have to talk to them, right? And we have to know from them what they are experiencing in their school, so that we can come up with a plan, and then you can talk to them about these are our parenting values. But we have to be open to listening to what they have to say.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
And if I can add to that, it's so important to understand, depending on how many generations have already existed in the States, right? So, if you're first generation coming to the States and your child is first generation American, they're adapting to this culture that's completely different from yours. And so just being mindful that for them, life is way different than maybe what it is for you. And so it's very important to understand that the way that they're going to assimilate things is going to be different. Or, I know with my older child, I'd send her to school, and in my house, we had certain rules and certain things that I was protecting her from, sent her to school, and she would be exposed to all these different things, right? And so now I'm having to have conversations with her at an earlier age than what I was expecting to have those conversations. Even when we talk about development and what the best time for each thing is that we might bring up these subjects, sometimes they're being exposed to these situations or these different subjects at an earlier age or just in a different time that we thought. So just being mindful to have, like everyone's already said, just that flexibility. We're not all perfect. If we look at our own lives as parents, we're not perfect. We've failed many of the times. And so the same passion.
Parenting is a test. Like, we are, going through it's nobody, we are all not perfect. We are not forever parents. Like, we are also doing parenting for the first time. We don't have training, right? So
and each child, and each child that you may have is going to be different. They're going to simulate things differently. So you can't even do a cookie cutter, parenting, because it's not going to work. So just again, just being flexible, just being open. One action, whether it's good or negative, does not define the whole of us, right? So we want to give that space to our kids and the future generations to be able to know that they have a support, that we are there for them so that they can come to us at any time when they fail, when they don't fail, when they did something good, when they didn't. And of course, I'm just reiterating what was already said, but then that compassion and that mercy that we can have for them. Just remember when you were their age, what were your parents like? Were you that perfect, or did you have things that you had to grow up and learn as well? And it might have looked differently, but we also have to give our kids grace because they are growing up in a culture that might be different from ours. It definitely is. And so just being mindful that we have to give them some sort of grace so that we can have those conversations, because we're learning and they're learning, and it's just going to look different, but we're going to grow together.
So let's go on to the next one. And thanks, because it's a very important point that you mentioned. So Cecilia, I'm going to go to this, yours, like when we are talking about, going through this crisis times. And there was a question in the QA box where they said, like, kids are getting very sensitive. They are being very, sensitive to criticism during this pandemic time. So so is there a reliable functional integrative psychiatrist in the area who will apply all the options, including meditation, diet, and others, before placing this younger future generation on medication? That's one question. Any spiritual role of spiritual health in this pandemic? What's the root cause of rise in mental illnesses? What are the parents missing?
Firstly, I can
also ask you a headache question that'll come next. So we have to, I think we got to go through these questions real quick.
I think about the functional psychiatrists, as far as I know, there are functional doctors are typically not psychiatrists. So there are psychiatrists that do integrative psychiatry, which is combining functional medicine and psychiatry. As far as I know, there's not anyone that I am aware of in the Charlotte area. But I think people have a misconception is that psychiatry is all about medications, because the model of practicing psychiatry, the science behind psychiatry itself is biopsychosocial. So the first modalities of treatment is, how can, nutrition, sleep, circadian rhythm, what we put in our body, exercise, substances, what the food we eat, those things do impact our mental health. So when you go to a psychiatrist, it's going to be a comprehensive treatment plan that includes healthy eating, good sleep, exercise. For those that needed, acupuncture, or you want to make sure no other medical illness is contributing to it, or nutritional deficiency or vitamin deficiencies and things like that. And then there's psychotherapy, which is the whole mind-body connection, the brain, and that affects your body and your behavior. Medications is the last in that process. So I think part of the reason why people equate psychiatrists with medications is by the time we see a child, a lot of times these things have already been done. In fact, we are the last ones to see the child. The first people that see the child is the nurse at the school, or the teacher, or the ER doctor after a suicide attempt, or a neurologist who's seeing a child for repeated headaches and everything is showing up negative, or the gastroenterologist who's doing all kinds of tests where the child is constantly vomiting and things like that. So oftentimes when you get to a psychiatrist, every other condition has been ruled out, all the modalities have been tried, and then you come to a psychiatrist. So oftentimes it's severe enough, some kids do warrant it. So medication is not the first thing, it's actually the last thing in that biopsychosocial approach. I think Cecilia want to segue into the headache part.
Yeah. So I think it's very important for us to make that distinction, because I see a lot of kids with concurrent, headaches and having a lot of comorbidities. And my first, sorry.
I do think that you wanted to, before we go to headache, did you want to address the spiritual?
Yeah, I'll address it together because it's all anyway linked. Yeah. I'll keep it short. But just to take from this point, which Kalpana is bringing, is very important, because the first things that we do as neurologists, we depend a lot on our psychotherapists for cognitive behavior therapy, which is a very, very, useful measure for older children, older than 5 years of age, to help them manage their headaches. So we also don't start medications immediately for children with headaches, because there are a lot of underlying causes that may cause this headache, especially in this pandemic. I've seen like a staggering increase in the number of headaches, right? Because it's just that they are in front of their screens, and a lot of other secondary causes. So one thing I've realized through practice, I'm probably the youngest among all of our attendings here today, that science, like medicine as such, we are very dependent on facts and evidence base, which is, all of us believe in that because there is shown evidence that this is working. But at the same time, all of us have that humility within us to respect that there are factors and there are, forces that work beyond our control, which also impact our, day-to-day life and our behavior. So that's where my interest in spiritual health came in, because I saw having a spiritual path for me helped me a lot in my own journey, whether it be stress through medical school, because that was the most stressful period, and then coming into residency, etc. So I think spiritual health, physical health, emotional health is all sort of combined as one. And when I talk about spiritual health, for the most part, I'm talking about whatever path you follow, right? Whether it be meditation, whether it be mantra chanting, whether it be focused awareness, there is science behind it. There is definitely a neuro pathway that is involved, which improves. So all of them are positive, but one cannot depend on it solely. So when your child is showing you signs like Jairaj mentioned, completely like staying in his room, closed his door, this child, the first step cannot be meditation. He needs evaluation. So we need to recognize if it's subtle signs, then maybe, starting, first of all, as adults, we have our own practice, then we can bring our children into such a practice. So without us trying it and experiencing the benefits, it's very difficult to force our children into meditation or force our children into anything. And the foundation of most meditations are breath watch. So if you see maximum number of studies, etc., if we look at it, it's breath watch. That is one of the most useful. Apart from that, whatever path or even a faith, if you have, you follow that. And beyond that, for people who don't have a faith, there is nature, and stay connected with nature, because it is one of the most beautiful ways to get your children out of the house and to connect with nature. It really deviates their mind a little bit. So these are ways that I talk to my children who have headaches, give them this advice that, I talk to the families as well, that if there is a way that you can start to spend time exploring your inner being, which is interoceptive awareness, we call it in, the neurological terms. And then you have your exteroceptive awareness, where everything's going on outside. And the pandemic, for some reason or another, forced us to face that part of ourselves too, which is our, interoceptive awareness and what's going on within us. And a lot of us are facing challenges as parents, as adults, as individuals, facing our own emotions of fear, anxiety, and we have to, like Kalpana said, adapt to that. So how much more for our children also to adapt to that? So that's where I would say having a path or a spiritual path is very helpful if that's something that resonates with you. But know that that's a balance. There is a fine balance in science, and we should always, speak to the experts before we make that decision.
Yeah, spirituality is important, yes, of course. And there are people with no faith at all, and whatever brings you joy or cause that oneness with the universe, if it's music, whatever works for you. And also, if I can briefly mention, and I think there's a lot of negativity around psychotropic medications. Medications are not all bad, as we know. Like, we've saved millions of people because of medications, because of the pandemic. This world would have been wiped out without the vaccine. If this happened 70 years ago, we would all be dead. We are alive because of science and a lot of advances. So medications are not always bad. There are certain conditions, like, if you're a schizophrenic, if you're bipolar and your safety is at risk, or you're psychotic, you need medications. So they can be life-saving. So, not all psychiatrists, we are not pushing medications, and people always have a choice. It's always a good idea to have an open mind, to discuss the options, learn the pros and cons, so you understand that these gamut of things that you can try that can help your child. So when it may be a right time to consider medicines too. And you can always choose not to medicate your child, but medications are not all bad either.
Okay. So we are at 4:27. We have like 3 more minutes to finish up. I have like some questions there were like about like how to discipline our kids. Sibling rivalry, how to address that. So maybe like Cecilia, would you be able to just give about the serious headache? When should I worry if my child has serious headache that needs immediate attention? Then the rest of the question, should we just go ahead and record? There's another question that there are like a couple of isolated questions about kids says feeling depressed at times when asked for reason. He does not know the reason, wondering how I can help with those situations.
How about Jairaj addresses the discipline part? I think, we had talked about that.
The challenging behavior, right?
Yeah.
So again, it all goes back to what's the standards of the house you have set in for the parents. When the child is acting out, is that a gross deviation from the normal behavior, or is that happening consistently over a period of time that has become the baseline for the child to communicate? So anything that is alarming, which is totally different from the baseline, you need to take a step back to see where this child is acting out. What has changed in the environment with this COVID or isolation? It's out of frustration that you have taken away something, or something has come in. There was too much pressure for the child to perform. Everything needs to be considered. So you understand the behavior. So you have an understanding of what's going on in the house and what's going on at school or in the social circle, so that you have a clear-cut idea why your child is behaving in certain way which is not normal before. So when you have that understanding of the child, again, so many people, my colleagues here spoke about having that open communication with the child, like the child should come and openly talk about what's going on in school. If that is not happening, then we have to work on our parenting skills to develop that relationship with our children. It's not too late. It's never too late at any time in their life that they should be openly coming and talking to you what's happening, what is distressing them. So if you are setting boundaries suddenly, like cutting down the screen time or putting pressure on performing, or if there is anything, conflict between the parent and the child, or between two children in the house, the rivalry and everything. So if you understand the process, why this child is communicating in a distressed way, rather than reacting, we can approach it in a proactive way to deal with that behavior. So not to react in that situation, sitting tight, let the child vent out their frustration. So after they went out, they go to their room. You slowly direct them to go to their room and think about what has happened and why they behaved in certain way, so that when they are calmer, when you are calmer, you can have that discussion with them separately from others, so that they are not on the limelight, so they can openly talk about why they acted out, like what they are frustrated about, what is bothering them. And if one parent had conflict with the child, the other parent has to compensate here to calm the situation down and back off and take them to a quiet place to have that communication with them, so that it doesn't happen again, and slowly bring that standards back. So if they are frustrated, they need to communicate rather than behaving this way. So I think that will be the best approach for challenging behavior. And if there is something that is gone out of proportion, then you need professional help.
I think there's a question here about rules. One of the parent is asking the rules we make rather than following them. The child wants to apply back to us and how to handle such a situation. I think the important thing is to make sure that, you know, these rules and disciplining methods are appropriate to that child's age and development. So rules, you know, it's a family and it's a home. So it's okay. I mean, if it's a rule that is appropriately applied to all of us, like for example, dinner time, no phone is a rule. You know, if the child says, "Why are you on your phone?" I think it's okay for a parent to say, "Yes, you're right," and turn it off. So, you know, it's okay if certain rules are, I think rules should be, all of us have rules. But if you feel like you're breaking the rule, it's your responsibility to tell the child why you're breaking the rule. But if the child is right, apologize to the child and clean up your act. It's okay. Let them know that you make mistakes too. And, you know, it's okay for the child to speak up.
Point out your mistake and then like you accept that.
I mean, you learn from your child too. The children can teach us so much. It doesn't matter what age it comes from. And I think one of the things I know Cecilia had talked about the brain development and things like that. You know, when something about taking advantage was brought about, sometimes it's hard, and I struggle with this as a parent too, as much as I understand this brain development. It's very hard not to take some of these behaviors personally. You know, you may feel like they're doing it they're angry at you. But I think it's important to remember that developmental age, adolescence, is about finding out who they are. So one of the major things that they're going to do is to question everything, to try to break away from their norms, try to break away from their parent. They are going to question how they were raised, religion, sexual orientation, everything. So it's okay to, you know, if they're going to experiment, it's just like when your toddler tried to learn to ride a bike, they fell off, or, you know, you wouldn't get mad at them. You know, they are going to make mistakes. It's going to be, you'd rather have your child that makes mistakes where you can catch them and teach them and get them back on track, rather than them so terrified of you and then go do things when they're in college and things like that, where they don't even have the guidance to, you know, when they make a mistake. So that's part of their brain makeup. That's part of a developmental stage. That's a skill they're trying to master. So you want to encourage that and not shame them, be non-judgmental, accept it, learn and pick up and move on.
So, well, I'm tagging along about what you said, Kalpana. Don't take it personal. That's a big, learning for me. So I was talking to another parent, my friend. She suggested this book called Untangled yesterday. I haven't read it yet. You guys, some of you might have read it. It is guiding teenage girls through the 7 transitions into adulthood by Lisa Damour. So it's apparently it has helped a lot, her a lot, like just understanding that it's not personal, it's part of their development. Apparently helped her a lot, and I'm about to check that out too. So this is something I thought I'll share here. So we are actually over time. Should we just stop and then maybe address other questions later and in a recorded session? Will that be okay, guys? And then we can.
I mean, personally, I don't mind going on. I have time, but I don't know about other people.
I don't know. There might be a fatigue, right? I think we are losing our attendees. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, we are at a 90-minute.
Lauren probably wants to go and take a...
He's like, yeah, it's past my midnight, guys. I've been waiting to sleep. So yeah, I think it's a good idea, Purnima, to probably stop here and then, let's
go for
it off and
we have addressed most part. I would like to address headache a little bit more. What are the warning signs, and then sibling
I'll touch upon that. There are just three main ones. I think just to leave everyone with that is if your child wakes up at night with a headache, it wakes them out of sleep. That is definitely something that please bring to attention. You can even take them to the emergency room for this. Nobody would wrong you. The second is if they're having early morning vomiting. So they wake up in the morning, they start having headache, and then they start vomiting. That is not a very good sign. You want to speak to your pediatrician and get them to a neurologist. And the third sign, which is the most subtle but very important in many young children, is behavioral change. So you start noticing that they are becoming a little more irritated, they are losing their temper more easily. They're not typically your children, the way they would rather, behave in a normal situation. And then they start complaining about slight headache after that. That is something that try to reach your pediatrician and get them seen by a neurologist. You may also see a drop in their school performance. So that can be another sign for you to consider when they start having school performance drop and headaches, because this can be sometimes headaches and sometimes even seizures. So reach out to a neurologist through your pediatrician. These are just three main things: behavior, nighttime headaches, and any kind of vomiting, which is early morning associated with headaches.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Cecilia. Thanks for the quick about that. So with that, I would like to say thanks to all the panelists. Thanks, Lorenzi, you're in India. Thanks so much for being awake and being part of this panel. And that shows how passionate she is about in educating people about this mental health. And thank you so much. In spite of her busy schedule, she joined. Thanks, Cecilia. Thanks, Kalpana. Thanks, Priya. Thanks, Jairaj, and Anita and Sangeeta, Karuna. Oh my God, you guys are awesome. You have been so good always. I've put in a lot of work. I would like to have Kelsey talk a little bit as well, because she's with the Cardinal Innovations. She has some education material to share with us. She's going to support us to provide education for minority mental health. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And so I know that we're getting off soon, so I won't take too long, but we did have some resources that I think, are you guys going to email those to the participants?
Yeah, Kelsey, Sangeeta or I'll be sending it tonight.
Okay, perfect. So you will receive a copy of two references in regards to Cardinal Innovations Healthcare. And we are a behavioral health managed care organization for about 20 counties in the Piedmont region, north and south. And basically, if you do have a crisis, I do want to give you the 800 number, or if you do need any assistance that deals with any of the topics that we talked about today. So you're experiencing stress or anxiety, or you think you need a referral to a psychologist or any behavioral health services, what you do is you would call that 800 number. So it's 800-939-5911. And those two materials that we're going to share with you goes over, the types of services that we provide. Who do you reach out to that 800 number? Usually they'll hear from you what types of services you're looking for, and they'll search for you and make that referral for you. So it's very helpful. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you'll have someone speaking to you live. So it's not like a recorded message or anything like that. And you can call that number if you need any support on any of these subjects we talked about in any of the counties that we serve.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thanks so much. And as a closing, statement, I would like to say one thing. With the COVID being the stressor, like it's once in a lifetime. I hope I don't want to go through this type of pandemic ever again. It's a stressful situation for all of us. It's okay to, Lax, it's okay to be enough. We don't have to go and touch the star. Even if we go to the end of the road, it's fine. That's a struggle. We made like some small steps. It's fine. I think.
Do one day at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, one day, 1 hour at a time is my goal. Like, no high standards. It's okay. Just, take baby steps. It's fine. So.
Yeah, I think that's, definitely great advice, Purnima. Yeah, thank you to all the doctors who are here, and very, very grateful for all of you, and Priya especially, thank you for joining this team and helping us out. To our audience, I hope you guys enjoyed today's session and it was insightful. It was very insightful for us who are not doctors, but working on parenting skills. So appreciate everybody's input. We will send out notes, and if there are any further questions, Purnima, is it okay for me to say, we will record and send if there are any other questions that come up from the audience through email?
There was one that popped up at 4:30. I just took a screenshot, and then we can talk about if we can. Oh, actually, Lorenzi has written something. Let me just take a picture. Is it going to be available, the QA, Sangeeta?
I think it's
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there are just a couple that we missed, but
right. Yeah.
So we
Sure.
can.
Yeah. If there are any further questions, I'm sure we'll be able to answer through email, team. But yeah, appreciate everybody spending a time on a Saturday evening, Sunday early morning, whatever time frame you're in. Yeah. Thank you. Talk to you all soon.